Hi everyone. Welcome to the community meeting, and I will share my screen and go through the agenda. So the first discussion topic we have is can we set a target date for 1.0? And the this is the milestone we have, 1.0 milestone, and then also we have V1 roadmap. And if I go to the epics, we have most of the things in implementing, and mostly the documentation, the API review, and obviously the minimum control for selecting catalogs is kind of work in progress. The question is, do you guys think we should set up a 1.0 deadline, like a target date, and try to achieve it? If not, then obviously you can push it by a week or two. Again, come back and take a look if you can actually release it. I just want to get a feeling about what do you guys think we should do to get the 1.0 released, because I think we have almost there. Uh, Obviously, few things remaining, but unless we do a 1.0 release, um, there are also a lot of work items after 1.0, 1.x, which you need to get to. Um, that's only possible if we finish 1.0 and release it, and then and can get some feedback from the community about how things look, um, and things like that. So what do you guys think?
So, what's the difference between saying when all of these items are done, um, we are ready versus having a date by which all of these things have to be done?
I think it's just prioritizing. It's how we prioritize stuff, right? So for example, um, if we um, let's say do want to see right now, it's like whenever it's gonna finish, right? That is one way of doing things. The other way is like how much work is remaining, and can we get all hands on the deck to finish them so that we can release 1.0. It's basically, I mean, I don't know how to put it. We, I mean, we can wait for all the epics to get finished, but how long should we wait? Can we wait infinitely? I don't think that's gonna be useful. So
In my mind, there's two discussions that have to be constantly happening. One is what is truly the scope that's left, and can we keep staying on top of reducing that to the minimum set of things? And the other is that scope done? Um, I don't think it makes sense to say we're just going to throw a date out into the open, and no matter what happens between now and that date, we're going to release 1.0.0 on that date. And I say that about 1.0.0 because it has implication, like saying 1.0.0 as a major version has much broader implications on what we can't break anymore. So if we let something stay in because we didn't give it enough um, review time, like we didn't do our API reviews and they didn't finish or whatever, like then now we're stuck with something that if we had just spent another week or whatever crossing our I's and dotting our T's, that would save us so much more time for the next years to come. At the same time, like we can't just putter around and just keep putting more and more scope into V1. So I think it's a balance. The way that so when we did operator SDK 1.0.0, when we got towards the end, about to the point that we're at now, we sort of converted into we've converted from Scrum into what's the other one? Kanban.
Kanban, yeah.
And we just met every single day and we said, here's what's left, who's working on what, make sure that everyone's aware of the PRs that are ready, and let's make sure that we're giving the right stuff the right amount of attention until this whole list is done. So if we want to do something quickly, I think that's probably, I mean, in my maybe biased opinion, that was very successful because it made sure that we were um, really staying on top and focusing on those most important last bits.
Right. I
So
think, go ahead.
just to be fair, the only way that what you just described there differs from what we would hope for from a Scrum process is that we're making the assumption that everything we're working on is the same size and complexity. And other than that, that just sounds like a really super healthy agile process.
I think um, the thing that we had going for us with SDK 1.0.0 was that there were essentially like a whole ton of little, move this to this internal thing, or make sure that the CLI flags are what we want. And it was a lot of little things. So I do agree, Jordan, like if there's like some big outstanding item that we can't break down, that that doesn't work very well for the process that we did for SDKs 1.0, because it was like we'd get together once a day, and generally the items were small enough that in the course of the past day we had been able to put a PR up and have a review ready to go. And so like every day would go by and we'd say like, okay, yep, here's my PR and I need some reviews for it. And as a result of working on this, I found one other thing. So here's another item I added to our list. And we just kept doing that over and over until it was just gone.
Yeah, and I think that what you're pointing out there is a combination actually of assuming everything's the same size, but also a really good culture of breaking things down to their minimum implementable size.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing that, then yeah, you get a good sense of forward motion. But you're also pointing out the idea, the underlying supporting socialization on a daily basis in what I presume was a sync session.
It was. Yeah. And that I know that's hard.
And all of those things working together, I think, generate the environment that you're talking about.
Yes. And you do really need to have all of them to make it really smooth. Otherwise, like there's going to be friction.
So to make sure that we are being fair to Lala's or where Lala is coming from, maybe it's also worth asking the question, is there any stakeholder who's invested in having or seeing a date? And of course, yeah, we put a date and then we have the conversation if the date needs to be put, but at least to have a date in place. Or is it just, hey, let's just have a date so that we don't procrastinate or we don't putter around? Um, is it just that, or do we have stakeholders that we need to have conversations with about
No, I think the the intent behind my intent behind asking a date is to understand how much work is remaining, like not to push people to uh, like put any pressure on people to finish their stuff. No, that's not the intent. The intent is by looking at current amount of work and then also going through the work to actually kind of, I think what Joe touched, I think that's why I think Bryce has put these two links to go through them, which we need to go through as part of this meeting. Let's figure out the scope of the work we have for 1.0. How much work is remaining and how much time it's gonna take, like in general, is it like just to get an idea, rough approximate impression about, is it 1 month away or is it 2 months away? Um, that kind of information, not like exactly kind of time box everything, not in that sense. Does it make sense, Anik, what I'm trying to communicate?
Yep, makes sense.
basically, well, you're saying let's find a way to share a joint understanding of the work that's left.
Yeah,
And then once we all think that that's the set of work that's left, then we can essentially do a sizing exercise where we say that's small, medium, large, and using that, then go and say, here's when we think we'll finish all this work.
yeah, that would be way better, right? I mean, at least we'll know that how much work is remaining. It would be easier for planning and everything, like, um,
I agree. I think the one caution I would have is that I think we should do that. And we did that with that SDK 1.0 that I was talking about too. Like I had a meta issue where I just put in a whole bunch of stuff that I knew we needed to do. And then we established a date and worked and sort of started to burn it down. But the one other thing we did is we empowered everyone working on all of this stuff to say, if you find something else, basically like if there's another thing that you think is a release blocker, then let's put that on the list and let's talk about it and let's make sure that that gets considered. And that necessarily means that okay, well that means like we either need to spend some time and decide that that's not actually in scope and what we're going to do about it, or we need to actually do it, and then the scope changes a little bit, and maybe that means the release date shifts out.
yeah, yeah,
In practice, though, what I found is, and I agree with Jordan that like if we don't have all of these things sort of coming together in a confluence of nice culture, what I found was like we went really quickly because we were all focused on this singular thing and it was really easy to coordinate and say, okay, if you do that and you do that and you do that, then that's all fairly straightforward. We can describe exactly what we want done. There's not a whole lot of ambiguity with this. Let's just go and do the mechanics of setting up the PR that does the change that we just talked about. And tomorrow, like we'll have that done. So it's like you burn through the stuff very quickly if you're able to set up that culture. And it was like I think we probably hit the date with room to spare because everyone sort of rallied around, okay, let's just go and make sure that this gets done. And everyone sort of had the same expectation for the pace and what we should do and what we shouldn't do and that kind of stuff. And what really wasn't high pressure. It was actually like really nice because like everyone could see everything coalescing into the point where at the end of it, we were like, cool. Like yeah, there's nothing else that I can find here that we need to do. And I'm confident now that we've covered everything because I've been through this thing 4 times over the last 4 weeks with a fine-tooth comb. And so everyone then felt really good about saying, yep, let's do 1.0.0, we're ready.
yeah. No, I agree with you, Joe. So I think I think, uh, if you guys agree, then we can go through the individual operator controller milestone 12 and then catalogs milestone 11, and then also go through our 1.0 we can do it along with the roadmap check-in kind of thing, both together, to find out is this our plan, or is this something we can even like still groom it, or in the sense like refine it um, towards 1.0. And also the sizing activity, if you guys have any precedents before doing it, like do you have any reference how you size cards, or is it something we need to come up with a um, come with a content on how we want to size our cards? Uh, any comment suggestions?
What if, I wonder if instead of trying to size a whole bunch of stuff in the list, what if we said, let's try to set up that process of, a daily 15-minute at 10:45 or 11 Eastern to make sure the largest set of group of people can be present. Let's all get together. We'll have one person that pulls up one view that says, here's our list of stuff in scope. Basically like a quick scrum that's focused just on the OLM V1 stuff. And in that meeting, then we basically help people overcome any blockers or obstacles. So, I need a PR review or answer a question. And then also, do we need to break anything down? Is there any ambiguity here? Um, what's next and who's going to do it? And then like we don't really have to size it in advance, and maybe that means we can't commit to a date. But I think like if we start seeing some progress on our list used to be 20 items and now it's 15 2 weeks later, and now it's 10 the next week, and it's like, okay, cool, like we can start seeing like it's going to probably be such and such based on how fast we're burning it down.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Um, Anybody else? Any comments?
Uh, so do we feel that a daily thing would be useful? I mean, I think we have this weekly meeting that we could add it as part of the stuff that we go over every week is here's the set of stuff. And that way we have a little bit longer to go over all of the things and any blockers people are running into. And then we could maybe focus more asynchronously on like, hey, I need help on this individual thing, and making sure that we're spinning threads in Slack and ensuring that we're quote unquote bugging people to make sure we're getting reviews and things like that. Um,
I personally found a synchronous get together every day to be super valuable because it helped everyone understand and have a shared context for what the most important bits are. And it was a setup where we were really quickly able to trust each other and say like, hey, I'm having trouble figuring out what this means or how to do this. And rather than waiting 3 or 4 days to get an answer to it, we can answer it right then.
Yeah,
And yeah, Todd, I think every day, like if we're trying to get down to a 1.0.0 and we think we're, a month out, I don't want to do this forever because that seems like it's pretty heavy. But I think if we want to do it quickly, I do think that every day is actually super useful. And if we here's what I would probably say is like a backstop to that. If we meet every day and we're not being productive when we meet every day, then I think there's another problem that like we're not doing things in a way that's going to be productive. And either we need to change how we're doing it so that it makes sense to meet every day, or if we can't do that for some reason, then we can back off.
Yeah, and it's a temporary thing. It's not like we'll do it for like whole year or something. It's probably once we have a strong control over the cards, which is needs to be done for 1.0, and we feel like everybody is like um you know they're getting all the information they need, like PRs getting review and everything. Probably we can after 1.0 we can stop it, right? I would say
Oh yeah.
we need to stop it after 1.0.
Yeah. We did it for SDK 1.0 and we never did it again. So I'm not worried about that becoming the status quo.
Yeah. So probably like few weeks. Probably I would guess it will probably for like a at least 4 weeks. I can guess by looking at the amount of work we have. But it's like a very like a arbitrary week I'm talking about. But yeah, and it doesn't have to be like you said, Joel. Not everybody needs to be present, but like for some reason you cannot attend it. I think that's fine, right? It's not for everybody to like some whoever feel useful and also to get context. I think it's going to be very useful.
What I would say is everyone who is assigned a task that's part of the 1.0.0 scope, I would expect to show up, unless you're on PTO or have a doctor's appointment or whatever. Like it's not like end of the world, but if you're sitting at your desk and you've got one of those things that you're working on, then yeah, I think I would want those people to show up. And we do have to make sure that it's fast. Like we can't be sitting there for an hour. It has to be what's blocking, what do you need help with, what's next, who needs something. Okay, you got that, you got this, and we're in and out quickly. I
So
promise this worked well. well, I think we should give it a shot. And if everyone hates me afterwards, then, don't invite me to the next happy hour and we can maybe turn down the everyday thing if it becomes a problem.
So question, as outlined here, it sounds like a pretty standard high socialization environment for development, except for where we said not everybody needs to come. And the only reason I stick to that is because we talk about, hey, we want to get together and we want to very quickly identify who's not making progress and how can we help those people. But a critical aspect of that is who is available to help. And if people aren't showing up unless they are the ones who are blocked, then it's an echo chamber of the blocked.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's where I think, Joe and probably me comes to picture. So, or anybody from a maintainer group, I think, when you're upstream maintainer, it's a lot of responsibility, right?
Yeah, and
It's,
if people aren't able to do a sync real time, like if you can't make all of those things here, we can also try to do some additional socialization in the upstream Slack when we're blocked to try to scab over the fact that not everybody has that availability. I just think that have we're going to have a way to be able to call on help and have it to be a meaningful conversation, or all this is going to be is reminding us that we're blocked.
yeah.
Bryce, you want to talk about what you put in the chat?
Yeah, because I cannot see the chart
Yeah.
price. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my only I'm not against trying the everyday thing. Like I think that's totally fine. One of my only concerns is that we end up with an environment where like only the few folks that potentially lead that meeting know where, like, quote unquote, where to look for the state of things and what still needs to get done. Um, I think we should make sure that regardless of whatever way we go about it, there needs to be like a common dashboard that everybody can go to at any time of the day and get a pulse on what is still needs people to work on it, what's in flight and who's working on it, and then like what's been done. And then um, we should also ensure that we have different avenues for communicating beyond just that regular meeting, right? Because like, what if I run into an issue after that, like immediately after that 15-minute meeting? We should
Totally.
ensure that we still have like those avenues of like we can ping in Slack and not have to wait for the everyday sync to say, hey, I have a problem and things like that.
Absolutely. I totally agree with everything you said, Bryce.
And Bryce, to follow up here, I put it in chat as a follow up here. My gut says that if we keep the 1.0.0 GitHub dash that we have up there, the project view, up to date with regards to what's going on there, and we're socializing around challenges that occurred out of band for the meeting, do you think that we're transparent enough?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think we might want to consider having, because it sounds like what we want to do is we want to have like an individual ticket kind of thing. So we might need to create a new project view or whatever that has selection for like all of our, these are things that must make it into 1.0. Like these are things that are all in the scope of 1.0. So kind of like the milestone there, but just in the project view, because then you can do like the Kanban board style stuff. You can't do that in the milestone view in GitHub.
In my
Okay, so then
mind,
we have
there-
some work to do.
there's a couple ways to do it. When we did it for SDK, some of this stuff didn't exist. And so I ended up using a single meta issue that we just constantly updated. I'm not saying that we should do that again, but one thing that I think we should make sure to do is for every single item that we think we need, make sure we have links to both the issue itself, either it's on the dashboard because it is an issue and that's what we're looking at, or it's a meta issue that has a link to the actual issue that we want, and the PR links. So like if we're consistent about putting both issue links and PR links on individual line items for stuff, or if they like show up in the issue in a consistent way, uh, that I think is like a piece of like one of the cogs that makes this machine turn very quickly, because then it's like very easy for us to see, here are the issues that we're primarily focused on. Here's the explanation of those in the description. Here's the PR that does it. I can review it. It's all linked together there really well. So however we come up with it, that's one thing that we can do essentially in that meeting to make sure that it's all consistent.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can take an action item to set that dashboard up if we want. One of the things that I'd like us to do in this meeting, though, if I'm going to be setting that up with some of the remaining time, is making sure that all of the issues have, like, we have a label or something that indicates that it is within the 1.0 scope, or a set of labels that we're using to say, anything that's in the 1.0 scope must have this label so that it appears in some view or some filtering criteria that we can look at for 1.0.
Yeah.
And then, because if you look at like the roadmap check-in link, if you go to that and you go to one of the breakdowns, so like if you go to breakdown dash operator there at the top by new view,
This one? No,
two more
not.
over.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
So that one, I've been trying to keep this up to date, but so we've got like no status. And so if you go over to the ready for review, like these are all issues that have PRs linked to them. So if you click on just any one of them, you should be able to see who's it assigned to. And then on the bottom right there where there's development right above the subscribe button, you can see the PR that is linked to it. So my thinking is we just have a view that essentially for all of our issues for 1.0, we essentially do this.
Yeah.
And we're just keeping it up to date every day.
Yep. Totally agree.
Sounds good. So
And then when we meet every day, we just literally pull up that view and we just start talking about all the stuff in there.
Yep.
The stuff that's relevant to talk about, at least. Obviously, we don't want to talk about the whole scope of it every time.
Yeah, and my expectation, I don't know whether or not everybody's able to play around with the tickets in there, or if it's only people of certain groups in the GitHub org.
I think you have to be part of the GitHub group, right? Some GitHub group, then only you can, I think, probably move it around.
Gotcha.
I would say whoever is contributing to it, let's invite them such that they have access to put stuff in the right place. Otherwise, there'll be a lot of extra friction around forgetting to do it or asking someone else to do it, and it's unnecessary.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, you need a view for these things, and do we need to also do exercise where we need to like go through this milestone, making sure things which are tagged for the 1.0 actually we all agree that there should be part of 1.0?
I think we can do that in the scope of that meeting.
Okay.
Well, my reason for asking to go through that and make sure we have like consistent labels on everything is so that we can easily set up the dashboard for the next meeting. But if we want to spend like the first meeting or something setting that up, we can. I just figured it would be easier to be able to just jump straight into that meeting and start going through stuff. If we spend, like, we don't have any other discussion topics. We still have 28 minutes in this meeting that we can run through the operator controller milestone and say, these are all the issues that are definitely 1.0.
Yeah. One question I have about the timing. The daily stand-up, it would be, how much that would be the duration? Is it going to be 30 minutes or less or more? What do you guys think? And when we're supposed to have the meeting? What time would work for people?
What if we said like, I feel like 30 minutes might actually be too long. Yeah, 20 minutes seems better. What if we say 20 minutes starting at 10:40 a.m. Eastern, or maybe we could say 10:30 and have a break afterwards, but that makes it hard for West Coast. That way it's like it butts up usually against whatever our 11 a.m. meeting is, which is like a forced stoppage point as well.
Yeah, probably 10:30, I think. Yeah, it's a little hard for California, like, no, sorry, not California, West Coast, but I think there are meetings at 11, like this meeting. So probably 10:30 is the only window we have.
Sounds good to me.
Any
Does that not work for anyone? The main person I would be concerned about is Daniel. So Daniel,
yeah.
we say we're going to get together at 7:30 your time every morning. How much does that suck for you?
Maybe we can alternate times so that Daniel doesn't have to.
Sorry, Ankit, I did not get it. You were saying the alternate time?
No, I mean, maybe we can alternate times so that sometimes we have it a little bit
Different
later in
time?
the day.
Um,
Yeah, instead of having it at 10:30 every day.
We
Can
alternate between like 10:30 and noon.
yeah. That's actually a practical solution because then, Daniel is not the only person who is sacrificing his
Yeah,
daily.
yeah. Okay, let's do like, how about we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So we'll skip Fridays
Yeah.
and we'll say Monday, Wednesday is 10:30 and Tuesday, Thursday is noon
For Tuesdays, do we want to just make like the first X number of minutes or the last
of
X
this meeting.
minutes of this meeting?
We could do that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I mean that assumes we don't have a ton of discussion topics, but we could we could do this first and then go into discussion topics.
Yeah, this is the most important thing for us to be doing anyway. So I think they trump any other discussion topics probably.
So we're doing Thursday, we're doing 12, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. And then me and Bryce actually have two action items. We'll work on that. Cool. So now that we have we still have like 20 something minutes left, and we do not have any other discussion topics. We can go through the milestones. And this is the milestone for operator controller. We have 30 open issues. The first one is there something, do you guys agree we should go through these issues?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
And then also like if people, can you put this link in I guess it's in is this link in our doc? Okay.
Yeah, it's in the discussion topics. Yeah, you guys can see this. This is milestone 12, this is milestone 11. Okay, let's go through
If
them.
folks see that there's something missing here, like in the background, just go and start adding stuff if you can. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's go through them.
Yeah,
First
just
of
for reference, if it helps us make decisions any faster, I put this milestone together using the v1.0 epics dashboard and the the accepted release blockers. So this should contain everything from the 1.0 epics that exist currently, minus the parent epic issue. So this should be all the individual tickets within all of those epics, and
Yeah.
the approved release blockers.
Is that
Yeah.
based on some query that you wrote, or did you just literally move them into the 1.0 milestone?
I literally just moved. I went through every single epic, clicked on every issue, and added it to the milestone.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So I
Hmm.
don't know, maybe, I mean, to me, that just sounds like we don't need to look at all these individually.
Yeah, sounds good. So the first one is right provided service account documentation. Um,
Sorry, Lala. I think what I'm suggesting is like the stuff that's already in there from what Bryce just described. I don't think we need to look at it right now, at least, because that's already based on what everyone's understanding of what's in the 1.0 scope to begin with. So I'm
my
guessing like there's nothing controversial in there. And if there is, then we'll get to it when we start to actually talk about assigning it.
So maybe obviously I did not understand. So my question is like I understand that these cards are coming from Epics, but we do not. I'm wondering if we do not have a single card which is not part of any Epics, like the reverse is true or not.
I mean, so I manually went through and I didn't add any cards that were not part of a 1.0 epic or were not in the approved set of release blockers for the proposed release blocker issue. So
Yeah.
this should be all of the v1.0 epic stuff. One epic that was added after I did this was the like move APIs to a different location. So like if there's work items from that, those aren't accounted in here. So like I just wanted to bring up like that was the process I went through. And then if folks are like, if nothing seems like it's missing at this time, I can go ahead and highlight all of these, throw a specific label on there, and then do. Then from then on out, we can say, okay, everything that is needed to go into the 1.0, like our meeting where we're going over all the stuff in 1.0, we make sure that those issues have those labels and are added to the OLM v1 project, and then we can just focus on that one dashboard rather than these milestones.
Is there any reason why we just don't use, well, there's one reason I can think of, but could we just use the milestones directly?
It doesn't give us the Kanban style board that you mentioned.
Got it.
I mean, so you'll get to see who's assigned and PRs and stuff, but you're not going to have some kind of ordering as to like this is like somebody's actively working on this versus like they've just been assigned and they
Yeah,
haven't started working
you
or
can't
things.
reorder that list easily either. Okay, that makes sense. And the other reason I was going to say is this would only show stuff from operator controller. And if we wanted to put stuff in catalog D, that would make it a little bit weird.
Yeah. So catalog D would be the same thing. The only thing with catalog D, and maybe it's worth going through some of the issues there, is the only epic that I saw for catalog D that was still in the scope of 1.0 was the V1 API review. I wasn't sure if we had any bugs or anything like that that we had filed in catalog D recently that we want to look at or anything like that. Or if we've caught any bugs that like we're like we need to make sure that they're in there.
Not that I know of. There is one other related thing that I know we've talked about recently in catalog D, which is we moved the private image registry epic out of 1.0 because we don't really need it upstream. But we had that discussion about like, well, okay, that means we should probably also remove the insecure skip TLS verify field, which has some implications because we have to change how our EDEs work. I don't know if we've captured that anywhere, but that seems essentially relevant to the API review process, but I'm guessing we didn't capture it because we were thinking about keeping that from a separate epic.
Yeah, I think that's correct. The assumption is that we were keeping that functionality through the 1.0 release. Are we thinking that we might revisit that?
I think the thought process was we need to do an overall design for what our image registry
Right.
stuff is, and that means we don't want to commit in our API to any particular behaviors or perceived behaviors because they show up in the API. And there's one field in catalog D that is contrary to that, which is that insecure skip TLS verify.
Yeah.
So my feeling was we should get rid of that. At least until we have a design that says what we should be doing.
Yeah, I guess I would want to take a look at whether or not we've already erected some E2E that is exercising it. But outside
We
of something that comes out of that, I think that I'd be good with including that as part of the API audit stuff.
we put it in explicitly because it was easier to write EDEs because we could turn off TLS verification.
Yeah.
So that's where the implication in the rub is because if we get rid of that field, that means we need to figure out a way to inject CA trust. But we've already done something extremely similar in operator controller. So maybe we can reuse some of that infrastructure and logic in catalog D if we don't already have that.
I guess I'd prefer to see us structure that work to be able to inject the CI trust as a separate issue. And as part of the synergy with that, we could pull that flag. But trying to roll them all together feels like we're just pushing out when we're going to actually have the APIs in a steady state.
Yeah, I think we can separate them. That's just like we're going to remove a field and we can go forward with the API review with that field still in there with the caveat that like, hey, here's this other epic where we're trying to remove it so you can kind of ignore it.
Yeah, totally. I think we can definitely make sure that there are pointers in there to show that this is an area that we expect to change really quickly.
Yeah. So that I was actually going to ask, it sounds like we don't have any of that work described in a GitHub issue anywhere. Does anyone know if we do?
It doesn't sound like it. And Brett also mentioned that there was some minimal catalog selection work being done in catalog D as well. So that would also fall under the 1.0 scope. So we should definitely make sure we capture that and throw that in that milestone, and then I can update the labels and things like that.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, like, I don't know how important, like, if you've already got an Epic and operator controller, Brett and Todd for the catalog stuff, and we have some issues in operator controller that are talking about something in catalog D. In my mind, like, that's not the end of the world. If it's easier to organize stuff by putting it in one of the places, like, I don't think we should worry too much about being purists, at least for 1.0.0. We're going to be looking at the joint set of all of it anyway. So at the end of the day, we'll see it.
You'll have more trouble linking PRs that way.
Yeah, that's true. You'd have to manually put the full link in. But I guess my point is like, don't break your back if you're finding that that's annoying. But obviously, it's okay to do it if it's useful.
Understood. We can figure it out.
Okay, so
Okay.
I'll go and write up another issue and put it in a 1.0.0 milestone for catalog D, or should we put in 1.0 label on it? Bryce, what are you thinking?
Either one of those. If you put it in the 1.0 milestone for catalog D, I'll pick it up and do all the labels and assigning it to the right project and everything.
Okay.
So I'll just be coming up with a label and slapping it on all of the 1.0 issues.
Sounds good. And then we need to make sure that everyone knows what that label is so that if anybody else is adding new issues, everyone puts that label on there so it shows up. And the other thing that's important to call out here, which is not obvious, is that issues don't automatically get added to that project view.
Right. Yeah. So all issues, when you create them, you'll need to manually add the label and assign it to the OLM V1 project. I think I was just looking at the labels and it looks like we already have a V1.0 label. So I'll probably use that label and then just filter like to not include issues that have the epic label.
Yeah.
Since we want to focus in on individual issues, not epics as a whole.
Yeah, agree.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
I did add a GitHub action. Maybe I'll go and update it. There is a GitHub action that runs when an issue gets created that automatically adds epic issues to the project view. So maybe Lala, could you write down another action item? I can go and update that action in both catalog D and operator controller to also include issues that have the 1.0 label. And then that way, like, you don't have to actually manually add it to the project. It'll just happen in the background.
So here's the action item, Joe. Update the GitHub action to include issues with 1.0.0 label to the
Yep,
dashboard,
in the GH project.
to the Geo project, right? Okay. Cool. I think that's we should, let's move to the next roadmap check-in topic. I think we are kind of in a good spot right now. We discussed about the dashboard, we discussed about the timing, and also we'll probably use that meeting to also facilitate work, right? People who are looking for new work probably would be happy to join those meetings. Probably we can help them finding new work as well, right? What do you guys think? Like especially folks from community, if they want to contribute to something, is that daily stand-up would be a good place for them to join and figure out the work they want to do?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So next
Lala,
one is
before we move on, I had a question. I know I brought this up before. I just want to make sure that we are still on the same page after the conversation that we are having right now. So it sounds like our priority is making that dash towards 1.1 0.0, and then we're doing all of these. All right, we'll get together, and there's a specific set of work that we've identified, and we are interested in not blowing up the scope. In the absence of a date, we have to keep ourselves disciplined. So when it comes to other stuff like Sigstore, for example, what do we prefer folks do? Do we prefer folks? Do we want to all hands on deck sort of towards the 1.0 dash, or do we prefer, for example, I go and do a little bit of spike on Sigstore, and that's okay.
so from an upstream point of view, right? We have already identified from a community point of view, we have already identified things we want to things which should be in 1.0. So
Okay.
for now, we'll focus on that.
Okay.
Okay. So because we are in a community, right? We can take our decisions, and I think we have maintenance here and everybody's here. So we will focus on 1.0 release, and that's our priority from an upstream point of view. Whatever currently in 1.0, that's the scope of 1.0. We can probably the scope might change depending on situations, but I don't think it's going to change significantly, like adding a completely new feature to 1.0. I don't think that's going to happen. Very less likely that will happen. So whatever is currently at 1.0, which you'll see now, because we'll go to the roadmap check-in and you can see what are the epics currently for 1.0, and that's our target for upstream 1.0 release.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was what I was looking for.
Yeah. So if there are any gaps, then definitely, yeah, we will cover those gaps. We'll add issues, you'll add epics. Probably there's a new epic which I think Joe created. He probably have identified a gap. So, but I think overall, from a feature list point of view, we have identified the feature which is supposed to be in upstream 1.0, and we are basically targeting that.
Okay.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Yeah, awesome. Going to the roadmap check-in. So we have few epics which are in need docs. One is cluster extension user service account provided in spec to manage content. Ensure no two cluster extension can manage the same under an object. Implement full support for replaces skips and skip range. Remove OLM bundle media type, FBC property, and plain plus V0 bundle support. This still needs docs. And any comment for these cards, these epics? Okay. So moving to the implementing epics, one is review and finalize V1 APIs for catalog D. which is in progress. Minimal controls for selecting catalogs to resolve from. 1.0 documentation, review and finalize V1 APIs for operator controller. And then there is 1.0 proposed release blockers. I'll go to the 1.0 release proposed release blockers to see what's the status of each of the cards, which we already identified, or is there anything new we need to talk about. But apart from this, anybody have any comments, updates, or anything which blocks them? Do they need help on these 4 epics? Are you guys doing good? I would assume that's a yes. So let's go to this epic, which is proposed release blockers. So we have, these are the cards currently is release blockers. The first one is bundle image sources studios ext spec install namespace, not system namespace. So it was actually assigned to me till today. And I didn't get the time to work on this one. And then Mikolai was looking for work, and I suggested him that he can probably take it and fix it, and he's working on this one.
Yeah, I left some comments there, Joe. After the meeting, could you please take a look, maybe, or someone else? I think Joe probably has more context.
The one thing that comes to mind on this one is that it's also part of the image registry interaction scope of stuff. And I do wonder whether we should just take out the off namespace stuff entirely for now. And just wait and do image registry credential problem solving as part of the larger post 1.0 work.
Yes, that was what I was rendering. So like to me, currently it looks like it's not a blocker because there is some code which is related to namespaces, and I don't think it has any effect. And further changes might be useful in relation to support of registries, and I think we can probably move it to the scope of registries. But yeah, lots of the comments we can probably discuss it offline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks,
Sounds good.
guys. The next one is CRD upgrade safety pre-flight checks should catch backwards incountable changes between stored versions and subs versions of a CRD. It's assigned to Taylor.
Yeah, so I think I updated this after Joe and I had a discussion with David Eads, and I forgot to update the title, but we essentially need to just make sure that we check compatibility across all served versions with fail if incompatibility is found and there's no conversion strategy specified, and we pass if there's a conversion webhook specified as a conversion strategy. If Taylor's in the call, I'll let him go on about progress, but he reached out to me regarding this issue a few days ago.
Yeah, I'm here. So, I mean, Friday was I think it was Thursday that I reached out to you about this, and I started working on it. So, Friday was recharge day. I was out on PTO yesterday, so I've kind of just started diving into it. So not like a ton of progress, but I'm working on it.
Hey, thanks, Taylor. No worries. Move to the next one, which is a bug when insufficient permissions exist to watch manage resources, reconciliation halts. I think this is the PR we are talking about yesterday, right? Bryce?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's in our sync discussion over the PR yesterday, there was a lot of stuff we talked about changing. I was going to go through and make a lot of those changes today.
Okay.
And this issue here is kind of like related to that issue, and it's resolved by the same PR.
Okay, that's great. Moving to the next non-blockers, there is no proposed release blocker, so we're fine. And this already you have discussed, so this is good. Going back. So apart from everything, I think this is a new epic which showed up here, right, Joe? I think this is one you created last week. Do you want to give a quick overview on this?
Yep. So this is what Adam was asking about in terms of like, should we put this in the API repo? Should we make sure
Right.
that they're a separate module? And we decided that we need to do something. So this is just the placeholder for us to do more thinking and figure out where to put stuff.
I think this is something we need to kind of still discuss and figure out, right?
Yeah, I think this probably needs like an RFC sort of thing to help define what we're going to do.
Right. Okay. I think I'll pick it up as for our daily stand-up also. I'll try to get more information about this.
One thing that comes to mind looking at this and knowing that there's no underlying issues is back to Bryce's question of the dashboard. I think we might want to go ahead and just put epics in there as well, just in the case, like in this case, where like there is no underlying stories.
Maybe we can just create underlying stories, like we need a brief on this, and that we can put it.
We could do that too.
My argument for our like work items, I called it the 1.0. I've already started creating that dashboard, but I called it the 1.0.0 work items. Like I think that everything in there should be actionable.
Yeah.
Like I don't think this epic is quite actionable other than like it needs design. So
Yeah.
I'd prefer that we keep it in like our 1.0 epics thing.
Okay, as long as we're looking at both places to make sure that we're thinking about the full scope of everything, then I'm good.
Yeah, I would say that we create a card for this. I will create a card for this, and then hopefully I have access, and then I can we can add the label, and then it will show up in the view which Bryce is creating.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
But if it needs further discussion in order to be actionable, doesn't that confuse things? Because you're going to create a card that looks like it's actionable, but we still have discussion.
I think so. Thinking about how to keep things small, right? I would say that the card we create is schedule a meeting where we're going to talk about what we
There
think
you
we should do.
Yeah, that's
Cool.
what I had in my mind. Yep. Whatever the next action, right, that should be in the card, so that at least it's easier for people to understand what they need to do, right? And then basically path forward. Awesome. So that's all for the 1.0 milestone. And we have action items. We kind of crossed 2 minutes already. Our meeting schedule. Anything else anyone wants to talk about?
I did go ahead and create PRs for those actions. So if anyone wants to take a quick look and hit the approve button, those can merge and we'll be ready to go on new issues getting into that project automatically.
Cool. Also, I think a general shout out, that we have, like, if you see all the cards, right, there are like, I think at least more than 40% of the cards are doc cards. And, there are like at least one, I counted at least 14 cards, right? There are 14 cards related to documentation. So without we somehow figure out to do it among ourselves, there is no way we will be able to finish those documentation card. And if we really care about grow our community, like contributors or even users from OLM V1, documentation is one of the biggest important and biggest difference we can make. If the quality of documentation actually makes it easier or harder for people to get into a project, like as a user. So I know coding and everything seems very important, which is actually true, but then without a good documentation, it's almost very hard. Like almost, I would say it's very hard to grow a community. So think about this, right? I mean, our documentation is kind of the onboarding or onboarding experience for a user. Like a lot of users first comes to documentation, figure out if there is how to get started. Like, the initial steps are the hardest one. Like how do I how do I get started? How do I install? How do I use V1? Um, these are the most important part. And then how do they communicate with community? Once they take initial steps, they get familiar with it. Then there are bigger things they can go to do code or talk to somebody in the community. But if they cannot get started, it's very hard to grow our community. Like we go to conferences, talk about stuff, and we point them to a direction. Like here is the documentation, go and read and get started. And if you do not have a good documentation, all of my life, like the years I have been working in open source, any project which does not have good documentation, unless it's like Kubernetes or Linux kernel, right? Super critical projects, it's very hard to grow community. Michael?
Just as a downstream tech writer for the operator framework, it is actually just about as much work for me to review a PR as to like write one if I have the procedure steps. So really, like if we want to burn this down quickly, if I could pair with engineers to like help me figure out what, like the hard part for me is the testing and the what to do and getting things to work. So um we could probably burn things down pretty quickly, but it's the fumbling in the dark part that the trial and error that takes a really long time. So, maybe that's a separate meeting, maybe it's a separate call, Lala, maybe we can talk about this offline, but it's really the you know, if there's something that works, I can write the writing part quickly.
Yeah, but
So I just need to know what to do.
yeah, thanks, Michael, for the offer. I really appreciate it. But because it's like a 14 tasks and you're just one person, I don't, it's very hard for you to like even like, even if you can just review those stuff, I think that would be a great help. Um, it is, I think it's a very generic thing in any open source community. The people who write code also write documentation. It does because it does not have to be perfect. It is we'll iterate through the docs. It has to be acceptable. Initial quality should be just acceptable where people can actually go through the document and perform certain things in the project, right? Getting started documents and other stuff as well. And then we iterate through it to make it better and better and better. But the initial docs is the hardest part because it's a lot of technology and it's hard to write about them. So appreciated help. I think folks who wants help definitely can reach out to Michael, but I do not want to pin it on you, Michael. Sorry. So it's all of our responsibility. Um, this is how communities work. Like, we need to write the initial docs. Personally,
Yeah, what I was offering was feel free to loop me in early if you want help. Like if you've got something that works and you've got a demo that works, I was just offering the potential to loop me in early. Like I'm happy to do reviews and things like that. I just wanted to, if you know how to get it, if you know how to do it, and you've got a couple of short notes, feel free to loop me in early and we can work together. That's kind of what I was raising my hand for, not so much for doing everything, but for um helping shape things in that early stage.
yeah, I think, like that, I would suggest like have a doc PR ready, which is not even like perfect. Like just whatever you can come up with, have a PR ready, and then Michael, you can review it and give suggestion how to shape the PR to the direction when you can merge it and things like that. And that would actually even be very helpful. Do not try for perfection. I would highly recommend just have some documentation, get it reviewed from team members, and then slowly iterate over it. I mean, if we try for perfection or with a very high quality, it's going to be very hard for us to achieve all of this documentation. We'll achieve very good quality, believe me, once it goes through reviews. But the initial set does not have to be very perfect. Cool. Thanks everyone. Sorry for taking a little more time towards the end, and wish you rest of a great day for you, and talk to you soon.